Okay, folks, let's chat some more about everything wrong with how the US is handling the ongoing, ever worsening COVID 19 pandemic. First, I want to talk about test efficacy. So, there are two types of COVID tests: serology tests. These are blood tests that look for antibodies, which would suggest prior infection. These are wildly inaccurate right now, and we're not even really going to talk about them. Then there's the RT PCR tests. These are the ones where they stick a big old Q-tip into the very back of your sinuses. These are used to detect current infection. These are the ones I want to talk about today. So, first, let's talk about testing delays. Some folks are reporting delays of days to even weeks long between getting tested and getting the results. So you've got folks who get tested on Sunday, then they get exposed on Monday, only to get a negative test result on Thursday and leave for their planned vacation, actively spreading the virus along the way. There's also folks that get tested on Sunday, resume their normal lives until they get the results, only to find out they've been exposing everyone they've seen that week. This is one of the reasons contact tracing is so hard. By the time you know you're positive, you could have seen a dozen people. Who can really remember every single person they've seen in the last week, especially if they work in crowded offices, work directly with the public, or go to school? But an even more concerning issue than testing delays are false negatives. So this is a test that comes back and says you don't have COVID 19, but you actually do have COVID 19. The tests aren't a magic yes no answer like you might imagine. You might test negative because you have a newer strain that your hospital is not yet testing for. You might test negative because of a faulty test. You might test negative because there's an error collecting your sample. Or you might test negative because you were tested too soon into the infection, in a fascinating but also horrifying phenomenon. In a report published in May in the Annals of Internal Medicine, I'll link the article in the description, they analyzed test results from over 1,000 patients who had been seen, tested multiple times from the onset of exposure, and found to be positive. They noticed an interesting thing about the probability of false negatives throughout those tests. The first day of exposure, an average of 5 days before symptom onset, the false negative rate was 100%. This is bad. This suggests that if you're tested the day you were exposed, you will likely get a false negative. This has huge implications for schools and other open businesses who may be relying on testing results to determine who to quarantine. By day 4, false negative rate dropped to 67%, which is better but not great. By day 5, the average first day of symptoms, the false negative rate was 38%, dropping to 20% by day 8, an average of 3 days after the symptoms onset. So, testing is a problem. Relying on that to control the outbreak while people resume close contact activities like in person schooling clearly doesn't seem like it's going to work. In fact, many professionals are recommending that if you suspect you've been infected, to treat it like COVID and quarantine even if you test negative. So that brings us to masks. Cloth masks and surgical masks, because those are the ones that are much more widely available. First, let me say that masks are important. They are effective tools when used effectively, but asking a minimum wage cashier or a 12-year-old kid or an overworked, overstressed teacher, etc., to wear a mask for 8 or more hours a day is not a feasible solution. Masks are uncomfortable. That is a reality we have to acknowledge. No, they won't seriously harm you, but they are uncomfortable. Humans are not well versed in our ability to endure ongoing discomfort, especially when it's well within our reach to fix it. Folks will pull their mask down, hover it right below their nose, and so on. They're only as effective as they can be effectively used. Schools aren't even requiring masks in many places, which is beyond absurd. However, even if they were, it would not be enough. Masks are great when you have to run into a store or somewhere really fast and then leave. Masks are not effective in close quarters even if you wear them properly. They only stop respiratory droplets, which are a major factor in spreading COVID. However, COVID also spreads through much lighter, much smaller aerosols, which you can get through masks. So folks all crowded together inside, especially with the ventilation system that draws in those aerosols and whatever respiratory droplets from those not wearing masks or wearing them improperly happen to be in the air, and spreads it back out all over everyone, rendering social distancing moot. The longer you spend in a public place, the higher your risk of exposure is. Period. COVID is an airborne disease. It can transmit over distances greater than 6 feet. The idea that we're charging forward with school reopenings instead of reclosing all the shit we shouldn't have opened a couple of months ago is just so fucking bullshit. COVID 19 is an airborne, vascular disease that destroys the capillaries of major organs like the lungs, heart, and brain. It is highly contagious. It can infect and kill people of all age groups. This is an iconic horror movie monster, and instead of choosing weapons we can actually fight it with, like UBI, rent freezes, and grants for food growers, preparers, and content creators, etc., they're just tossing masks at us and shrugging their shoulders. 5 million reported cases in the US, a number that is estimated to be significantly lower than the true number of people infected. We shut everything down in March because we had around 160,000 reported cases. This isn't okay, and we shouldn't be okay with it.